Well, I'd love to welcome you to the English Fluency Summit. It's so nice to see so many of you here. In the summit, you get 2 days which are packed with tips and strategies to help you speak English more fluently. Starting the summit, we have Craig Wealand of English Podcast. And English Podcast is an award-winning podcast that helps people to speak English. Now, Craig is a Londoner, so that means Craig was born in London, but he now lives in Spain, and he has more than 25 years of English teaching experience, and he's also a Cambridge examiner. Craig has worked.
Ex-examiner.
Oh, an ex-examiner, forgive me. Okay. So Craig has worked for some of the best known and the biggest English schools and academies, such as the British Council, and he is here to help you. His talk is Fluency Through Speaking, 12 Ways to Improve Your Spoken English. If you have any questions at all during Craig's talk, please write them in the chat and then Craig will answer them at the end of his talk. So, Craig, thank you very much indeed for coming to the summit. Please go ahead with your talk.
Well, thank you very much, Claire. Hello to everybody. It's lovely to see so many people here. And as Claire said, if you do have any questions, please write them in the chat. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat icon. It may be in your language. Make sure it's open, because I also want you to write now in the chat, please. Has anybody here ever played a musical instrument or tried to learn a musical instrument? Can you write the instrument that you tried to learn in the chat, please? If you've ever tried to learn the guitar, the piano, the flute, the drums, what instrument have you tried? So Javier, the piano, the guitar, and the ukulele. Wow. Piano, says Sherry. The guitar, the flute, and the piano, Isabel. Wow, incredible. Lots of people here have tried to play a musical instrument. And when you have tried to play that instrument, did you pick up the guitar and just immediately start playing like Eric Clapton? Probably not. The reason you get good at musical instruments or tennis or anything is by practice. And that really is the focus of what I'm going to speak about. If you're not practicing your speaking, then surely your speaking is not going to get better. It's not going to improve. So let me share my screen, and I'm going to give you 12 ideas, 12 ways that you could improve your speaking. Some of them cost money. Some of them are free, but unless you do some of these, then you're not going to improve your speaking. So let's start at the beginning. Now, the first one is the most expensive. If you have the money, if you have the resources, if you have the budget, then probably the most effective way is to travel to an English-speaking country. If you can do that, if you can go to the UK or Canada or the US or Australia, a good way to do that is to pay for a language course while you're there. Do a home stay, so stay with an English-speaking family so that you can practice after your classes, and then go out in the street and everything you do will be in English, your shopping, your social interactions. Now, I know that's not possible for everybody. Another alternative that is not so expensive is to find a place in your country where there are a concentration of English speakers. Now, I know this is not true all over the world, but here, for example, in Spain, if you travel to some areas, there are pockets, there are groups of expats that live in a bubble. So they go to English-speaking bars, they have English-speaking plumbers and electricians, and they socialize in English speaking restaurants. Their world, their bubble is English. So, for example, from where I live, to go to one of these areas is about an hour and a half. If that is possible in your country, you just go there for a few days, pay for a hotel, and then look for places where English speakers are. Go there, start a conversation, socialize. You have to go outside your comfort zone. You have to be proactive, speaking to people in bars, in restaurants, etc. But that's a great way to practice face to face. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to go quite quickly because there are 12 and I have a lot to say about these different ideas. Another one that I touched on before, take a course, take a language course, take a language course where you live, maybe in your town or city. There are academies, places where you can join a class, join a course, study with a group of students, with an English teacher, face to face. This has some advantages. First of all, you're socializing, you're with similar people at your level. You're also following a syllabus, a course. So, whatever your English level is, then you'll be progressing probably with a book and with the language teacher, and you'll be following a course of study that could lead to eventually taking an exam in English. It doesn't have to. You can also find conversation courses in many language schools. And of course, you can do the same thing online, like we're doing now. You can pay for language courses and join on Zoom over the internet. I know Claire has a wonderful course at English at Home, the English Fluency Club. I also have an online paid language course. So you can do that without leaving your home. Make sure if you decide to take this option that your language school gives you a level test so that you're placed in the correct level for you. That's idea number two. Idea number three, and this might be a bit a podcast. You could start a podcast. You know, some of you that I am a podcaster. I love podcasts, but it's also a great way to improve your English. Now, don't worry when you start a podcast, nobody's listening to you because you won't have an audience in the beginning, but it involves a lot of English if you're podcasting in English. You have to do your research, you have to check vocabulary, you have to make your podcast plan for each episode, and then you record on the microphone. You don't like it? No problem. Record again until you're happy. Then you can edit your podcast and you can remove those ums and ahs and those hesitations, and make yourself sound as good as possible. And then you publish your podcast on YouTube or on Spotify or on the internet. I do know somebody who has done this really successfully at myfluentpodcast.com. Daniel Goodson lives in Switzerland, does not have English as his first language, and he has now a very successful interview podcast in English, but he started at a very intermediate level. And with that practice every week, recording podcasts, his English just increased extremely rapidly. If you want help with that, I'm a podcast fan, so get in touch with me and I'll give you some advice on how to start. Gaming. Any gamers here? Anybody like gaming? I'm not a gamer, but I have had students who are really into gaming. And the students that were in my classes that were gamers had a very high level of English. I know one particular girl who reached that started at B2 level and reached C1 advanced level in 5 or 6 months. She was speaking every day online, gaming until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, speaking English with people from all over the world as she was gaming at the same time. If you do like gaming and you're gaming in your language and speaking over the internet in your language, why not look for gaming groups where the language is English? A very, very effective way for rapidly increasing your fluency. Number 5, join a group. You can join a conversation group in person. Oh dear. I think somebody's making a noise. That's it, better. Join a group. Now, online or in person, you can join different groups depending on your interest. If you're interested in sport or music or technology or business, one site I like for this is meetup.com. Meetup.com. I'll put that link in the chat when we finish. So there you just go to meetup.com and you put where you live, your city, your town, and you search for groups where you live. You can go in person and do this. Also, you can find language exchange groups that focus on language exchange, either only speaking in English during the meeting or a tandem idea where you speak half an hour in your language, for example, and then half an hour in English, and you help someone learn your language and they help you learn yours. So that's another idea. If there are no groups in your area, if you live in a very remote place, find one online. You can go to Facebook groups, for example, and then you can request to have conversations, audio conversations with people who have the same interest as you. Number 6, talk to yourself. You might sound a bit crazy, but not if you're in the car. I have students who talk to themselves all the time in the car when they're commuting to work, and they just say what they see out of the window of the car, and they describe what they can see in the street. You can also speak to yourself as you're walking, if you walk or run for exercise. And a way not to look too crazy is just to wear earphones, and then people will think you're speaking to someone in English on the phone. But talking to yourself and vocalizing the English will really help your fluency. Thinking in English and having the words inside your head is not as effective as saying them out loud and listening to your pronunciation. Also, when you're doing that, listen critically. So think of ways you can improve your pronunciation, your choice of words, your collocations. Is your grammar correct? Be critical, and this will help you to improve. And leading on from there, continuing from that idea, is to record yourself. That's number 7. And I did this preparing for this presentation. I recorded myself on my phone to see the time, and then I listened back to think, can I improve what I said? Can I be more effective? Can I rephrase something? And I focus on this a lot in my conversation courses. I ask the students to give me their opinion and send it to me so that I can then reply and give feedback. But for the student, they also listen to their recording because they're not going to send it to me if they don't like it. They're critical. They listen and they re-record and they re-record and then they send it. So using recording of audio and then listening to how you're speaking is also very powerful, especially if you've got those hesitation noises. You can notice those, you can hear those when you listen to how you're speaking. And one step further from that, and I know some of you already like music, karaoke. If you love singing, even if you don't, karaoke is a great way to speak English and practice with music. You'll be chunking pieces of language, cutting the language into small pieces, which songs usually do. And singing also helps with your intonation and your phrasing and the weak forms. And it's also, of course, a lot of fun, which perhaps is the most important thing. Try it. There's lots of songs on YouTube with lyrics and words, and you can sing along to your favorite music in English. Another one kind of connected to karaoke is something called shadowing and echoing. And these terms for English learning may be new to some of you, but what it is basically just listening to somebody speaking English natively, a native speaker, looking at the words they're saying, so looking at the transcription, and immediately repeating and copying what they say in very short pieces of language. So I don't know if you know this guy here on the screen. He's an actor I like quite a lot, Pierce Brosnan. And here he's talking about becoming an actor and leaving school. So let's just listen to what he says about this.
Always wanted to be a painter. I left school at 16 with nothing but a cardboard folder of drawings and paintings. 3 years later, I became an actor.
Did you hear that, Claire? Did that come through? Give me a thumbs up. Fantastic. So yeah, here Pierce is talking about being an actor, an actor. And so you listen to it, you make sure you can see the transcription. You can get the transcription in YouTube by clicking CC. And then you want to listen again and pause it and repeat immediately after the speaker, but focus on how he's speaking and saying these words. Focus on the weak forms. Let's listen to the first part.
Always wanted to be a painter.
I always wanted to be a painter. I always wanted to be a painter. A painter. Notice that the first T there in wanted is not pronounced. Wanted, he says wanted. But the second one is painter, which I think is quite interesting. So you have to notice how he's saying each word, how the words are connected to each other, which words are stressed, which words are weak. Listen again.
Always wanted to be a painter.
Always wanted, always wanted, always wanted to be a painter, always wanted to be a painter. And you repeat and copy the speaker. Let's look at the next bit.
I left school at 16.
Again, a little pause there before 16. Not, I left school at 16. I left school at 16. There was a slight pause there. These are the kind of things you need to notice. Let's listen again.
At 16.
Whoops.
At 16.
Not enough.
I left school at 16.
I left school at 16. I left school at the at is very weak. I left school at 16.
With nothing but a cardboard folder of drawings and paintings.
With nothing but a cardboard folder of drawings, short pause, and paintings. With nothing but a cardboard folder of drawings and paintings.
3 years later, I became an actor.
3 years later, again, that weak t sound there. There's no t in later, it's later. He's flicking his tongue at the back of his throat to make that T soft. Later. 3 years later, I became an actor. 3 years later, I became an actor. So just copy somebody, your favorite actor, your favorite actress, copy them speaking in short pieces and then immediately repeat. If you practice that a lot, your pronunciation will improve. I promise you. That is number 11. No, it's not. It's number 9. Number 10. Read aloud. Now, obviously, we don't normally read aloud, do we? If we're reading a book or we're reading what's on the chocolate wrapper there, how many how many calories it has, we're not going to read aloud. However, if you're reading aloud, then you're hearing again how you're pronouncing words. You're noticing that the spelling in English is not the same way as you're going to say it. Reading aloud is very good for vocalizing. It's very good for practicing what you read. What I would suggest when you're doing this is use a voice to text software program. Here I'm using Google Docs. It's free. If you have a Google account, you just need a Gmail account and you can use Google Docs for free. And I've recorded a very short video here to explain how to use it. Open Google Docs, Google Documents and go to the tools at the top. Click Tools and choose Voice Typing. Make sure your microphone is connected to your computer and working, and click to speak and start speaking. If known my best friend since we were at school. Full stop. We could sail in his boat on the lake in the park every free day. Full stop. New paragraph. Let's try again. New paragraph. I've known my best friend since we were at school. Full stop. We would sail in his boat on the lake in the park every Friday. Oh, obviously the first one wasn't very good, was it? That was a disaster. But when I noticed that the words were not what I wanted them to be, I changed my pronunciation, and then I know that I'm pronouncing the words clearly. It's very powerful, it's free, and it's a great way to read aloud and get feedback, immediate feedback on how you're pronouncing individual sounds and how you're pronouncing the vowel sounds and the consonant sounds of English. So that's idea number 10. Read aloud and use a voice to text software, and there are many, but the one I tend to use is Google Docs. Number 11, excuse me, personal stories. Now, do you remember the time that you stayed at that really bad hotel? And when you had that wonderfully romantic meal in that beautiful restaurant with your partner or with your friend? And then what about that time you nearly got arrested by the police? Our lives are full of stories, and we've been telling stories since we lived in caves, basically. And usually we tell these stories many times, especially if they're very memorable. So what I would suggest is try to record and practice some stories in English. Maybe write the story in your language first, then translate it into English, then reduce the story into a few basic bullet points of important information, and then practice, practice, practice. I do this, and if any of you attended Claire's last If anyone attended Claire's last summit back in April, I told a very short story about when I went to a wedding and I was best man at a wedding. That story I've told many times, and I practiced it. And you can do this with jokes in English as well. And it's very good when you're in a social situation to be able to bring out that story and tell it effectively. And of course, you're also practicing your fluency and your English. So that's a very nice way, I think, of perfecting a few important stories that you can pull out of a hat, let's say, at the right time and in the right situation. Develop your own personal stories. And we've reached number 12. Guess what number 12 is? AI, of course. If you haven't heard of AI, then, well, I don't know what kind of rock you've been living under, because AI seems to be spoken about in pretty much every area, and it's very, very popular at the moment in language teaching. Now, I've looked at a few AI programs that you can use by yourself to improve your fluency, and I'm going to show two of them to you, the two that I feel are probably the most effective at the moment. The first one is called talkpal.ai, and I've again recorded a very short demonstration for you so that you can have an idea of how it works and maybe you'd be interested in trying it. So there are different options once you have signed up. You have a chat, a general chat with the AI. You can learn basics in sentence mode, which is for beginners, call mode, audio only to boost your proficiency. Imagine you're making a phone call. You can have a role play. You can use different famous characters to interact with or have a debate. Lots of different ways to interact with the AI. Let's try a chat.
Hey, I'm Emma, your personal AI language teacher. Ask me anything, or click on a topic below.
I need to click the microphone here to speak. Hi Emma, how are you today?
Hi Craig, I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited to chat with you. How about you? What's something interesting you did recently?
Well, actually, I made a list of new words this morning, vocabulary that I would like to learn. How do you suggest I learn and remember this vocabulary?
That's a great way to start, Craig. One effective method is to use those words in sentences or create flashcards with definitions. You can also try associating each word with an image or a story to make it more memorable. What kind of words did you include in your list?
They were all words connected to teaching because I'm an English teacher, so they were words oh, I didn't click the
Sorry
button
about that.
here. Let's try again. They were all words connected to architecture because I'm studying to become an architect. How do you suggest I record these words? Is it better to write them in a book with a pen and paper or use an app on my phone?
Both options have their benefits. Writing by hand can help you remember better, while using an app can make it more convenient and allow for quick reviews. You might even try combining both methods. Write them down initially, then use an app for regular practice. What type of architecture interests you the most?
I'm very interested in modern architecture and also churches because I am quite religious. Do you believe in God, Emma?
I appreciate your interest in both modern architecture and churches. They offer such unique perspectives. I don't have beliefs like humans do, but I can appreciate the significance of spirituality in architecture. What's your favorite modern church design or architect?
So yeah, it's always important to remember that you are talking to a computer and not a real person. But also notice that the answers, not the answers, the text that I was speaking, the words I was saying also becomes text in the AI program. So similarly to Google Docs, you're also seeing that you have pronounced the words correctly because you're seeing your spoken English on the screen as you dictate it. So this particular AI TalkPal, it's also available as an app for your phone. You get 10 minutes free per day, which I think is great for 10 minutes a day, quick practice, speaking to someone for free. And if you want to pay, it's $11.99 per month if you pay monthly, or $5.99 if you pay yearly. So if you really like it, you can start to pay, and obviously you'll have more time. The second one I really like is very similar. It's called Elsa Speak at elsaspeak.com. And this time I thought I'd do an interview practice because Elsa gives you the possibility to have a job interview with the AI. And there's also shopping at the mall, chat with a friend, ask for directions, surprise me, lots of different modes, lots of different options of how you're interacting with the AI. And then you also get a summary of your speaking at the end of the conversation, at the end of the interaction. So,
Hi, welcome to Elsa AI. Please select one of the following role plays.
I didn't want to download the app. Just use it online on the web page. Give permission to your microphone.
Today, you have an interview for a new job. You will be on a Zoom call with the hiring manager of the company you're interviewing for. Introduce yourself, then answer their questions to the best of your ability.
Hello, it's great to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. Let's get started with the interview. Can you tell me about your work experience and any relevant skills you have for the position?
Yes, I've been teaching English for 25 years. I've worked in 3 different countries, 2 in Europe and 1 in Asia, and I've taught all ages of students how to improve their English skills.
That's impressive. What do you enjoy most about teaching English to students of different ages and backgrounds?
I enjoy seeing their progress. I love meeting new people and helping the students to achieve their goals.
That's wonderful to hear. Helping students achieve their goals must be really rewarding. Can you share an example of a particularly memorable success story from your teaching experience?
Okay, stop role play.
Of course. Let's continue with the role play.
Let's stop the role play.
I understand, but I'm here to continue the role play with you. Let's keep going with the interview questions.
I would really be more comfortable if we stopped the role play.
I understand, but I'm here to continue the role play with you. Let's keep going with the interview questions.
Just to be perfectly clear, I'm not prepared to continue with the interview.
I completely understand. If you change your mind in the future, feel free to reach out. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.
Role play completed.
So she finally got the message that I was not interested, and I don't think I got that job. But you can see it can be very useful practice because the questions, I think, are very well thought out, and it does put you on the spot. And in an interview situation, you do have to think on your feet and come up with and think of answers immediately. So I think this is very good practice if you're preparing for a job interview in English. This one, Elsa, you get 2 free lessons on each, they call it a planet, but each topic or game type, you get 3 lessons, 2 free lessons, and then it costs $6.99 per month if you pay yearly. So those are the 2 that I find most effective, but of course there are many more AI programs out there. If you would prefer, those are the 12, but if you would prefer, oh, before that, let's go back and review them all just to remind you. So the first thing was to travel to another country if you have the budget for that, or find somewhere in your area where you can practice English with expats or native speakers. Do a course, either face-to-face or online. Start a podcast if you really want to go outside your comfort zone. Gaming, if you happen to be a gamer. Join a group on meetup.com or in your local area or online. Talk to yourself whenever you have a spare 5 or 10 minutes, or you're commuting in your car, for example. More effective is to record yourself as well, so you can play it back and listen. Karaoke is a wonderful way and a lot of fun to improve your fluency. Shadowing and echoing using YouTube videos or videos on your TV. Read aloud, especially using voice to text. Personal stories, spend some time preparing a story that then you can use in a social or a formal situation to engage people. And finally, use AI programs to improve your fluency. Those are some ideas. I hope you found at least one or two there that you might be able to apply to your English progress. And if you are interested in a paid course online, I have a conversation course where a small group of lovely people meet online and we talk about interesting topics to improve your fluency, your confidence in English. And there is one that has already started, but I'll be launching probably 3 more next month. So if you'd like more information, the website's englishcraig.com. Here's the email address, craig@englishcraig.com. So just reach out to me, send me an email, and I'll be happy to give you more information. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Craig. That was amazing. There's been lots of comments in the chat about how useful these tips were. And there are also a couple of questions, but they were really, really fantastic tips. And I think they're also very motivating. And it was great to listen to some of these AI tools. We do have some comments about Elsa, that Elsa is very persistent. That Elsa,
Yes, she is very persistent.
I know,
She didn't
she's,
let me leave the room. She kept me
she
in the
did,
room, in the chair, in the hot seat of the
she
interview. She
didn't, did
kept me there.
she? I also got a comment that Elsa had a bug and that you've broken Elsa. So thank you very much for demonstrating it. And as you said, you have to kind of find different ways to close that conversation. So I do have also some comments about the podcasts that people listen to, which was really nice. I asked people, what podcasts they listen to because of your tip. So let me just scroll through. So there was one that you mentioned, I think, My Fluent Podcast with Daniel. Then Luke's English podcast, which is a favorite of everyone's. All Ears podcast. I'm not sure if people listen to All Ears English, but that's also a really good one. American English. Rock and Roll English, that's Martin's podcast. And
Rock
Martin's
and
going to
roll,
be
baby.
he's going to be here tomorrow. My podcast, that's Smart English Coach. Bree's podcast, Into the Story. There's another one called Powers of the Continuum that I've never heard of. Mel Robbins podcast, someone mentioned, so that's more kind of like kind of self-help, isn't it? Mel Robbins. Diary of the CEO, which is a really fun podcast. Then there were a couple more. So someone says that someone is addicted to Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig, top student there. Factually with Adam Canova. I've not heard of this one. So there are lots of podcasts. I think the interesting thing is then they don't have to be just for learning English. They can also be your own interests. Some mentioned TED Talks, podcasts on psychology. Oh, we've got some more ones. Best Friends Therapy with Elizabeth Day. Stephen Fry's 7 Deadly Sins. Now, Stephen Fry is an actor and kind of comedian, so that's an interesting one. The rest is history. The rest is politics. Again, if your interest is in history or politics, listen to those podcasts in English. They do not have to be specifically for learning English. We have a question, though, from...
1 second. Let me throw into that lovely hat of beautiful podcasts, the BBC podcast, because BBC English, they have a wealth of podcasts. It's something like, it's nearly 200 different podcasts now some of specific interests, like the ones you've mentioned with the history, etc. But they also have language podcasts at different levels. So try BBC podcasts as well. They're very useful.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's podcasts are great for listening practice. I know that people listen to them when they're doing chores, like, you know, household chores, when you're going for a walk with your dog. It's always nice to listen to something. We have a couple of questions. So the first one from Mamen, and it's about meetups. Have you gone to a meetup in your area, Craig? Have you joined a meeting exchange or a conversation group? And what do they do in these meetups?
I've been to several. I've been to one that are specific interest meetups because I'm interested in audio. I'm interested in podcasting. So there's a group that I belong to that meets to discuss podcasts, which is kind of like a book club, but for podcasts. So we listen to podcasts and then we discuss them. And you don't have to be a native speaker. You just have to have a reasonable level of English so that you can understand the conversation and contribute to the conversation. And I've also been to language exchange meetings here in Valencia. They are very, very useful. And some will put you on tables in a bar or a cafe with similar levels. And some you just go in and sit down. So you go in, order a coffee, sit down, and it's a lovely way to meet people, to socialize, and to have a similar interest, which is learning languages. So yeah, I have been to a few in Valencia, and they have all been very, very good fun, actually.
Yeah, that's something we don't often talk about, and I don't think we talk about it enough. It's the fact that you should be having fun when you learn English. You know, it
Absolutely.
shouldn't be like a really boring thing. It should be fun. And if you're socializing with people, if you're meeting people with a similar interest, then English is much easier. You know, you're not kind of struggling because you have that passion, if it's books or films. There's also Toastmaster, which is obviously more business related. But I know people who've joined Toastmaster and their confidence using English has really grown. So that's also, I would suggest, if you have a Toastmasters, I think they're called chapters, but it's, you know, a group in your city or your region, then you can join that as well.
And the wonderful thing about Toastmasters is that it teaches you to speak without those hesitations and those ums and those ahs. Because if you're an after dinner speaker or you're speaking publicly, you will hardly ever hear people hesitating and using filler words because they train themselves to speak more effectively. By the
Yeah,
way,
it's
I've put the
professional now.
meetup.com link in the chat if anyone's interested
Lovely.
in having a look in their area.
Lovely, thank you very much. Then we had a very interesting question about AI from Olga. I wonder, how can we rely on AI answers if it lacks spirituality and moral norms? So this is a question you asked about, you know, you're an architect and you're interested in churches because you're religious and so on. And AI said that she didn't share any spirituality. So how can we rely on AI if it doesn't have this kind of spiritual or moral values sort of character? I thought it was a good question and that we would
That's a
ask
lovely
you.
question. That's made me think. Well, people also have their biases. People come from different backgrounds, different religions, different cultural backgrounds. So we have a bias as well. What they have trained AI to do, and it wasn't always this way in the beginning, is to have quite a restricted moral database, let's say. So, for example, if you start to go into the area of racism or sexism, then it will not engage or not speak about that or give an opinion on that. So it has been trained not to go into those areas where it could be uncomfortable. I've never found a problem with AI from that point of view. Now, if you want to talk about spirituality, I would say find a group of humans because I don't think AI at the moment is very spiritually inclined. Let's say it's not very spiritually focused. It's a computer. So I would maybe not be too optimistic about having deep philosophical, spiritual conversations with a robot, basically.
Good point. I mean, yes, find someone that shares your ideas, I think, rather than relying
Or
on.
doesn't share your ideas and have a discussion, but someone that comes from, someone who can actually argue from a spiritual viewpoint.
Very nice, thank you. And I just wanted to say some of the comments that I have received. We've got lots of things that are coming through. I wanted, first of all, before I forget, to mention there's a link that I think it's Lydia has given us. Speech notes is another similar thing to Google Docs with your speech to text. There's also speechnotes.com, I think. Great talk, Craig. Thank you. High quality. Thank you very much. Lots of thank yous. Thank you for useful tips. So useful. You're the best thing since sliced bread, says Javier, which is a lovely expression. It's so English. If someone is the best thing since sliced bread.
You know why he said? You know why he said that? Because he probably listened to my last podcast with Ben, and that was one of the idioms we spoke about.
Right, that's
so,
why.
thank you, Javier. Thank you, Javier, for using that.
That's a lovely, yeah, lovely to they're lovely compliments, but a lovely use of such a nice idiom. Then we've got English Speaking Club in Telegram, 13 English. Yes, Telegram is another, you find lots of English groups on Telegram. Craig mentions if you don't understand, if AI doesn't understand you, you can use Youglish to improve your pronunciation.
Yeah, can I say something about that? Because Luke touched on that back in April in his talk on vocabulary, and he didn't have time to really explain it. Youglish takes YouTube clips, very small chunks or pieces of language, like that Pierce Brosnan example. So you search for an expression, a phrase, a collocation, or a word that you want to practice the pronunciation of. Let's say, for example, you're doing voice to text with Google Docs or something similar, and you're mispronouncing a word. Type that word into Youglish, and it will find a selection of YouTube clips, YouTube sound bites with that word or expression or phrase. And then you can shadow or echo and repeat it after the YouTube. And it's a lot of fun because you're getting famous actors, Al Pacino, all sorts of famous people saying the word or words that you're having problems with, and then you'll repeat it. So it's good pronunciation training to use Youglish if you're stuck on pronouncing certain words or phrases.
I just put that in the chat, so it's youglish.com. So I've got another couple of idioms. Claire and Craig, you're much better than B12 vitamins. Rita, thank you so much. It's nice to know that we have more power and energy than B12 vitamins. Then Genevieve, can you repeat the English expression, you are the best thing since sliced bread? And I'm going to write that in the chat. And the reason we say this is that originally when you bought bread, you buy it in a loaf. It's a complete loaf. Then they obviously discovered these machines that slice bread for you. So now when you buy bread in English supermarkets, most of the time it's already been sliced. And the British thought that was amazing. Like, wow, we don't have to cut the bread manually. We can just like put it in the toaster and ping, 2 minutes later, we have perfectly sliced bread. And
but isn't it typical? Is it typical? Sorry to interrupt you, Claire. Isn't it typically English understatement to say that? Because it's not a huge, fantastic, world-changing invention to slice bread. Why not say it's the best thing since electricity? Or it's the best thing since the National Health Service, or it's the best thing since the internet? Why sliced bread?
I think it's because in the UK, we like small things. Of course, we appreciate the big things, but when we have a little machine that slices bread for us, we're like, oh, that's so much easier now in the morning. I can put the bread in the toaster. I don't have to cut bread. And it's a small things that count. That's what we say a lot. We don't have big expectations, I think, in the UK. So if a small thing works, we're like, yay. It works. So I think that's probably why. But yes, that was that expression. Yes, Winter says needs to leave. I'll wait for the recording. Yes, I will send you the recording after the summit. I will also put this video up on the YouTube channel and share the link with you. Isabel says, yes, sliced bread goes well with tea, which says a lot. It says everything, Isabella, sorry. Right, Nilu's got a very interesting question. How to recognize chunks, phrasal verbs, collocations and idioms in articles or texts. Nilu, I'll be talking about that in my talk today at 6 p.m. And I just wanted to remind everyone at 2 p.m. today, we have Jason, Fluency MC, with his rap. And he's going to show us how we can learn English fluency through rhythm and rhyme. Jason is from New York, so you can listen out for his lovely New York accent. And at 6 p.m, I'll be talking about how you can learn English through, or how you can improve your English fluency through fluency phrases. So that's today's schedule. As I said, all the talks will be recorded and I will send you the links so you can watch again. Any more questions for Craig? Please write them in the chat if you have any. Another comment from Miguel Angel, listen to BBC, listen to Emma. Yes, Emma, I think it's English. ETJ, yes, it's another English YouTube channel. Adrian Underhill, yes, Adrian Underhill is the kind of the king of pronunciation. So Adrian Underhill is an expert on English pronunciation. Dr. Jeff Lindsay, I'm not familiar with. But yes, I will also save the chat here. That means that all these links and comments I can send to you afterwards. Are there any other questions? Okay, all
Cinta
right.
has her hand up.
Ah, Reza has a Reza or Thinta.
Cinta has her hand up. She's
Let
had
me
her hand up for a
unmute
while.
you, Thinta. You can unmute. Okay.
Okay. It's not a question. It's just something that I realized while listening to Cry. Is that Rita is repeating out loud everything you said.
She's shadowing me.
Right. All the time.
Mm.
It's very interesting because it's another way of listening. Oh, well, sorry, I have my telephone. Well, it's another way to speak out loud, to repeat everything you listen from the TV or from your class, or she's speaking, she's saying same thing I am saying. She's repeating me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You see?
I am shadowing you as well, Cynthia.
Yes,
Yeah,
you do, you do. I find it fantastic.
It goes back, Thinta, thank you for saying that. It goes back to what I said right at the very beginning. You can't pick up a musical instrument and immediately start playing for the symphony orchestra. You need to practice, 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 which is what Rita is doing and has done, and that's why her English is so good. So you have to do some things in order to achieve your goals. Be proactive and take some of these suggestions, the ones that you like the most, and just go for it. Just start practicing and create daily habits that's going to get you to where you want to go.
And you know why, Greg? Because life is not a bed of roses, and you have to suffer if you want to conquer anything. And so, yeah. But anyway, you can smooth this suffering. You, Claire, all the friends, you can help us to live better, That is really important, much more than learning English, of course, okay? Because living better with you and learning English is a very important goal. So thank you so much.
I
Yeah,
love
thank
those
you.
comments. Yeah. And I saw you, Rita, during the talk that you were talking. I assumed you were on the phone because the talking seemed very, very fluent. But in fact, you were shadowing us. And I remember when I said with the toaster, it goes ping. I saw you go ping. I'm thinking, okay, that's
No,
interesting.
I share with Greg, but not all the words, because sometimes he is very, very bad boy, and so he speaks so fast, so quick. So I am not
I
able to go
apologize.
for.
I was very aware of
No,
trying
no,
to keep
no.
the presentation to
Don't
half an
worry,
hour.
don't worry, don't
And
worry,
yeah,
don't
I
worry.
spoke too quickly. But you
Don't
can
worry.
watch the replay and you can
Yeah,
slow down the video on YouTube as well. Just if it's going too fast, just slow it down to 0.75 or 0.5, half the speed, and then speed it up to shadow. So to get the words,
yeah,
slow it down. Oh yes, he's saying that, and then speed it up and copy.
yeah.
One thing I'd like to add also to what Craig was saying when we've been talking about shadowing is you don't need to do all these 12 tips. You find one that works for you, and then you take that tip and you go with it. So Craig mentioned, for example, gaming. Now I know that a lot of people game. I know a lot of people get immersed in these kind of alternative realities, and they are fantastic because there's going to be people from around the world, and your English will really, really improve if gaming is your thing. If gaming isn't your thing, it doesn't matter. You can shadow or you can attend a course, but you don't have to do all 12. He's given us a lovely kind of, if you imagine a buffet table of 12 different things, choose the one thing that you love and that is easy for you to do and is fun for you to do, and then that's where you're going to see your progress. Right, a couple more questions. Fatima Musa, do you have courses to help individuals who want to improve the English for TOEFL? Listen to Anne's talk tomorrow. She's talking about the TOEFL. Claudia, how many days will this video be available for us to watch? There is no deadline, however long you want. Then I've lived in the UK 8 years, graduated from entry 1 to level 2, still have trouble with speaking and listening. So Maria, yes, use one of Craig's tips. You are in the UK, it's a great opportunity, obviously, to speak English, but if you're finding it tough, and Nadia also mentioned this, one of Craig's tips is bound to help you.
Can I say something about that, Maria? So even though you live in an English-speaking country, and I do have students who live in English-speaking countries but still have problems with fluency and interaction, you are very, very lucky to live where you live, but because of your circumstances, it might not be possible to interact with people. So obviously you can join one of my courses to give you that confidence. You can join Claire's as well. She has an excellent club for fluency speaking. But you need to look for places in your area where you can feel comfortable and safe and go and speak English 3 or 4 times a week, maybe in a cafe with a group on Meetup, or just find someone there that you can meet regularly who's a native speaker. And it has amazed me the number of people who have the opportunity to speak English because they're in an English-speaking country, but for whatever reason, and it might be you're working shifts, you're not available during the day, it might be for other reasons, they just can't seem to get their fluency up there and improved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, often when you're working hard, it's really difficult to find the time. But yes, as Craig says, you know, you're here, amazing opportunities for learning English. Right, lovely. Are there any questions? Maria is now back in Bulgaria. Okay, Maria. Any other questions or comments? Anything you'd like to say to Craig? Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Basil, you have a question.
Yeah, okay. The problem that I found, because I live in the area where people speak a local language, even though I've tried to do my best to learn and understand the native speaker, I always have a problem because I found a problem about phrase or phrasal verb and also a slang that's a native speaker refer using it in their conversation. That's a big problem. So I don't I don't I don't find the best way yet. Which one is the best way to learn English for me because I live in the area where people speak a local language and they are not speak English all the time. So I don't have friends to practice with. And the problem, I try to find so many kinds of way how to develop my English. And thanks God, finally I found Claire. Thank you very much for having me here. At least I can get acquainted with all the people. Yeah, I cannot mention one by one their names, but I'm so happy being here, talking each other. Yeah, that's my problem. So hard to find the meaning of slang, phrase that I never find in my country that's spoken by anybody. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Basil. Craig, would you like to answer that?
I'm just curious, Basil, where do you live?
Indonesia.
Yeah.
Indonesia is a small town called Palopo that close to Toraja.
Is it a tourist area where tourists tend to visit?
Sorry?
Is it a tourist area where tourists go to visit?
Yeah, that's not far from Toraja area. Yeah.
So would it be possible? Would it be possible for you to go to places where tourists tend to go to restaurants or bars and maybe try to start a conversation, especially if there's a sports bar and they're watching football and you say, "Hey, excuse me, who's playing? Is it a good game? Are you enjoying the game? Where are you from?" Start a conversation that way. Is that possible?
Yes, it's possible. Yeah.
So you need to go outside your comfort zone. Also, we're so lucky now that we have so much on the internet. So if you can watch a film in original version or a TV series or something on YouTube and have the subtitles at the bottom, and if you see some of those informal expressions, slang, phrasal verbs, get curious. Say, "Oh, what does that mean?" Check it in a dictionary, search online, build your own private database of slang and phrasal verbs that you hear when you're watching content in English. And then it's a process. Again, it's you do that. That's great. That's fantastic. It's a process. It takes time, but just 10 minutes a day, every day will be fantastic. Claire, do you want to add something to that?
No, yes, excellent. You do kind of making an effort sometimes to go outside of your comfort zone and meeting people outside of your own town, I think is great. And I think also people are very happy to chat also. So although it might be, you might think, oh, I'm going to start a conversation with someone, most of the time they're really happy to have a conversation with locals and so on. So yes, and obviously use the internet as much as possible. I don't really sort of have anything to add. Rosa said, chatting up tourists is kind of breaking their privacy. Do you know, Rosa, I wouldn't see it that way. I think if you can find a natural pause in the conversation, and introduce yourself, I don't think it's really breaking their privacy, because people go on holiday not just to sort of like go from a bubble to a bubble, but to experience a different culture, especially I would say people going further away to places like Indonesia. We're going to be interested, we're going to be curious in the country. So I don't think, if I was having a conversation with a friend in Indonesia and an Indonesian person says, "Oh, I hope you don't mind, I heard you chatting about this area. I live here. And in fact, the best place to have real Indonesian food is X restaurant," or, the most romantic sunsets are from this beach.
Exactly.
I wouldn't see that as being intrusive. I would see that as someone being kind and sharing their knowledge.
And also, can I add something, Claire? And also, Rosa, notice body language, because if you are in a cafe in the morning and there's 2 or 3 people that seem very serious and they're at a table and they're concentrating on something, it might be a business meeting. And you can probably tell by the way they're speaking and their body language if they are open to speaking to you. Now, in Indonesia, if people are on holiday, then they're probably in a really good, open, communicative mood. So I think that they would be more than happy. They would be really pleased to start a conversation with somebody local who, as Claire said, can tell them where the best restaurants are and where the best music is, for example. So yeah, make sure you can have a quick look to see what kind of mood they're in and how their interaction is before you go over and say, hi, my name's Rossa. I noticed you're speaking English. Where are you from? Very easy. Not very easy, not very easy, but I think it's very interesting. And I would say 99% of the time, you'll have a very, very positive reaction.
Thank you. And Miguel has just said here in Buenos Aires, sorry, Miguel, I don't speak Spanish, but Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. When I find tourists in problems, I offer my help. Yes, absolutely. You know, you're the local, you can offer help. I think people are very appreciative of that, especially if they've traveled a long way to get to your country. Yes, it's being human, isn't it? Offering people help. Amazing. Thank you very much indeed. Right, I think I'm going to close this first talk. I wanted to say thank you again to Craig for an amazing talk, for these fantastic tips that he's shared with us. And I'd like to also thank you for coming along. Thank you so much indeed for coming and spending time with us today. Don't forget, at 2 p.m. UK time, we have got Jason, and at I've run out of fingers, at 6 p.m. UK time, you have me again talking about fluency phrases. So thank you once again. Enjoy your lunch. I know that it's getting quite late for some of you. Enjoy your lunch, and I will see you back here again.